The rich husband and a mansion are mine. I'll introduce you to my ex-boyfriend as a thank you. Amelia leaned in close to me and whispered in my ear. Riches and mansions don't suit plain Olivia. Just get out. I had been holding my breath without realizing, causing my chest to feel tight. Breathing heavily through my shoulders. Get out? My breathing was so erratic I couldn't speak properly. Amelia laughed heartily at this. Oh no, Olivia, don't cry. Sorry, Olivia. But I decided to live my life with Amelia. Facing the possibility of a hyperventilation attack, Matthew ruthlessly presented me with the divorce papers. I was betrayed by both my husband and my sister. Receiving them made the pain worse, and I crouched down, clutching my stomach. I could acutely feel Amelia and Matthew's stares. I couldn't hold it in any longer. Lifting my face, which had been downcast, I unleashed the laughter I had been suppressing in a huge explosion. There's no way I was going to cry. The ones who'll be crying and screaming from now on are Amelia and Matthew. I am Olivia, a housewife in her 40s. I recently got married for the second time. My husband's name is Matthew. He's a man 2 years my senior. He was a tenant in the apartment I own. While cleaning the apartment, "Thanks for your hard work as always," he would greet me. Gradually, we started exchanging small talk and it developed into a relationship. I thought you were just a part-time cleaning lady. I'm also in my 40s. It's not surprising he thought that, given my lack of fashion sense and simply tying my black hair back. I was really surprised when I found out you were the landlord. Matthew, while working, was mostly engaged in his hobby of investing, and before he knew it, he had missed his chance to marry. I also had a bit of a hobby in investing, and we hit it off. Naturally, this led to marriage. Matthew would praise anything related to my investment talks as amazing. Not only that, but when I made simple dishes, he would be delighted and say they were delicious, and when I massaged his shoulders, he seemed to melt with joy. He's older but somewhat childish and pure at heart. Since I'm not at the age to want to wear a wedding dress for the second time, I felt bad for Matthew, who was marrying for the first time, so we didn't have a wedding. Instead, our new home was a high-rise apartment that Matthew wanted. Wow, what a view! Even though this high-rise is actually on the 5th floor. Matthew looked over the city with sparkling eyes. It's luxurious for just the two of us, isn't it? How many times bigger is it than the apartment I was living in? I had never imagined that Matthew's honest character, who was so excited at the time, would change to the exact opposite. The trigger was inviting Matthew's colleague to our home. Wow, amazing. His colleague, Smith, stood frozen in the middle of the room, his mouth agape. This is Matthew's place? It's like a hotel. I've never stayed in such a fancy hotel. Surprised? It's really something, isn't it? Urged by a proud Matthew, Smith hesitantly took a seat on the leather sofa. This was given to me by my wife to bring. Handed cookies by Smith. Matthew showed a troubled smile. Thanks. These are the cookies that sell for about $10 at the supermarket service counter, right? There was no need for him to say it in such a snide manner. Smith shrank back, feeling uncomfortable. Thank you for the cookies. I really love them. I tried to change the atmosphere of the place and offered Smith a cup of coffee with a bright smile. Thank you. Smith took a sip of the coffee, looking relieved. All this time you wouldn't even go out for drinks, and your lunch was either instant ramen or sandwiches with discount stickers. You wouldn't even buy a drink from a vending machine. You really never spent money, did you? So I couldn't believe it when you suddenly got a high-rise apartment right after getting married. You're amazing, man. Well, yeah. Matthew raised his chin and puffed out his chest. Who were those guys calling me a loser who couldn't get married? There's no one at the company making fun of me now, right? My bad. Your wife is lucky. Matthew and Smith were impressed. I was a bit concerned about Matthew's attitude, but maybe this is normal for conversations between men. Smith then lowered his voice. And added, the house is luxurious, but your wife is plain. That's because my wife didn't lose to you. I'm not only interested in cute girls like you. It's normal for a guy in his 40s to marry a woman in her 40s, right? A cute wife in her 20s is something out of a manga. I couldn't believe my ears. Both of them laughed as if they meant no harm. That's right. This high-rise has everything, even a gym and a fancy bar, not like the cheap bars you guys go to. I'll treat you to some drinks. With that, Matthew and Smith headed to the mansion's bar. In front of his colleague, Matthew had become overly confident. Just for today. Only for now. But from that day on, Matthew started to act more arrogantly. Ah, you went to that cheap supermarket again, didn't you? We're supposed to be upscale, you know. It's embarrassing, so stop it. Matthew frowned unhappily as he checked my purchases and receipts. What I hated the most was Matthew's evening drinks. He always sat by the window, drinking while looking down. The cars look like toys. And the people are so tiny. They don't realize they're being looked down upon, working down there. Matthew had completely changed. Buying discounted vegetables at the cheap supermarket and making stew together felt like a distant memory. I was beginning to harbor uneasy feelings toward Matthew. Then one day, when I came home, I saw a pair of high heels I didn't recognize in the entrance. I swallowed hard. Could it be that Matthew brought another woman home? Listening closely, I could hear laughter from a man and a woman coming from the living room. My palms were sweaty even though it wasn't hot. I tiptoed down the hallway like a thief. Peeking quietly into the living room, a woman with curly hair noticed me and raised her hand. Ah, Olivia. Welcome back. Eh? Sis? The tension I had been feeling instantly dissolved. The one drinking with Matthew was my sister, Amelia. The relief was short-lived as questions began to arise. I had told Mom about the marriage, but not about our new home. Amelia must have heard about the marriage from Mom, but I never expected her to just show up at our house. If you're married, you should have told me. I'm your sister, Olivia. Let me at least celebrate your marriage. Amelia, already drunk, leaned on Matthew's shoulder. It seems that Matthew had told Mom about our new home during the marriage introduction. I didn't want to tell. I had already warned Matthew that my family and I weren't on good terms. But when your future mother-in-law asks, "Where will you live?" it's natural to answer honestly. However, "Where will you live?" wasn't just small talk from Mom. She probably just wanted something to look down on me for. They must have laughed behind my back, thinking the high-rise apartment story was a huge lie. No, I was surprised. To think you actually live in a high-rise. It's so grand. It feels spacious and luxurious, completely different from our old family apartment. Well, yeah. This is high-rise quality for you. Wow, I'm jealous. Olivia, you're amazing. Even as she spoke, Amelia kept touching Matthew's arms and thighs. Matthew's smile grew wider with the blatant body contact. Olivia, you've come a long way from being a fast food wife. Matthew, making a face like a monkey, suddenly tilted his head. Eh? Matthew, didn't you know? Olivia's ex-husband worked part-time at a fast food place. Olivia used to go there a lot. Meeting there, it's not like they were high schoolers, right? Working in fast food, it's like a high school job. He was living off you, huh? Really? Mom and I were so worried, we were against the marriage. But I liked him, I wanted to marry him. We registered our marriage without telling anyone and then went no contact. They laughed and chugged their beers. My ex-husband, Stephen, being used as a topic for their amusement, made my head throb. I wanted to stop the conversation right now, but my body wouldn't move. And then, 5 or 6 years into the marriage, that husband died of illness. Poor Olivia. It's because she didn't listen to our advice and married some weird guy that she got her comeuppance. At that moment, I swung my right hand high. I snapped back to reality at Amelia's scream. My palm was trembling above Amelia's head. Scary! Were you about to hit me just now? Amelia, who had been glaring, blinked slowly. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, she became weak and leaned limply towards Matthew. Amelia was scared. Amelia's whiny voice sent shivers down my spine. Olivia! What were you about to do to your own family? Matthew yelled at me, and I clenched my trembling palms. I'm sorry, but it's just that my sister... Shut up! Are you trying to make excuses after making your own sister cry? I thought you were a kind woman. I was mistaken. A sob escaped from Amelia, her mouth revealing white teeth. Her overly red, vulgar lips were definitely smiling. Matthew gently stroked her messy curls, oblivious to the fact that the woman in his arms was smiling. But they were speaking ill of Stephen, who's passed away. Eh? Are you still hung up on your ex-husband? Matthew refused to listen to me. It was the moment a complete rift formed between us as a couple. It's always like this. My family looks down on me and makes me the butt of their jokes. That's why I wanted to keep my distance. Amelia, who was always considered more attractive. While I was told, don't worry. You can have plastic surgery when you grow up. While Amelia enjoyed a lively student life with fashion and dating, I focused on my studies. I did so because Mom would praise me for getting 100 on a test. But after scoring 103 times in a row, it became expected, and I was scolded for missing even a single point. Olivia is so diligent with her studies. I'm proud to have such a smart sister. I bragged to my friends that you're studying hard now to save up for your future plastic surgery. I was often ridiculed by Amelia, who was not good at studies but led a glamorous life. Even now as an adult, do I have to be laughed at by my family? I'm not even allowed to defend Stephen, who has passed away. Worse, Matthew joined in laughing and blaming me, which was unbearably frustrating. A week has passed since then, but our marital relationship has only deteriorated. Matthew, who had been so fond of living in the high-rise, has been coming home late. He probably doesn't want to see me. He avoids our bedroom and languidly secludes himself in another room. In this large house, we barely feel each other's presence. It feels like the emotional distance between us is growing. I can't let this continue. With that resolve, I approached Matthew the next day after he returned from work. Matthew. It's cold today. How about we have some stew together? Matthew, who was about to head straight to his room, glanced at the dining table. Warm steam rose from the pot, spreading a comforting aroma. Ha! His response was cold. I don't want to eat something as common as stew. If you want to please me, serve something like caviar or foie gras. Despite having never eaten them, Matthew shrugged his shoulders in disgust. Then he looked me up and down and let out a heavy sigh. It's not you. my mistake." With those words, Matthew disappeared into his room. My mistake. The meaning of those words would soon become painfully clear. "Welcome back." One day, I was greeted by Amelia in the entrance. She was in an unusually good mood, smiling brightly. Behind her was Matthew, scratching his head with a sarcastic smile. Amelia and Matthew looked happy, embarrassed, and seemed hesitant to speak up. "What's wrong? Were you drinking and talking bad about me, or Stephen again?" "No, you're being paranoid." As I went to take off my shoes. "Ah, wait." Amelia stopped me. "I'm sorry, but could you not enter this house anymore?" That, you know, right?" Matthew.
Oh, yeah, Amelia, you say it."
Like a bashful new couple, Amelia and Matthew were awkwardly hesitant. "You see, we've fallen in love."
Huh?
I responded flatly to Amelia's embarrassed admission. Amelia is not a high school student. She's a woman in her 40s with laugh lines. Somehow, I felt embarrassed. "Olivia, you still like your previous husband, right?" I was hurt. "So it's only natural for me to change my heart to Amelia, right?"
Huh?
I nodded, but couldn't comprehend. "Olivia, I'm really sorry." Her apology lacked any genuine emotion. Amelia clasped her hands in front of her chest, pouted her lips, and tilted her head slightly. She leaned in close and whispered in my ear, "The rich husband and mansion are mine. I'll introduce you to my ex-boyfriend as a thank you." The overpowering scent of a strong toilet air freshener gave me a headache. Her bright red lips barely touched my ear, causing goosebumps to spread uncontrollably.
It's okay, relax. That ex-boyfriend is also part-time. You likes those kind of losers, right? Riches and mansions don't suit plain Olivia. Just get out."
With her foul breath on me, Amelia finally moved away. I was completely frozen. Amelia crossed her arms with satisfaction, puffing out her chest. "Get out?" I had unconsciously held my breath, making my chest hurt. Breathing heavily through my shoulders. "Get out?" My breathing was so erratic I couldn't speak properly. Amelia laughed loudly at this. "No, Olivia, don't cry." Poor Olivia. "Sorry, Olivia. But I've already decided to live my life with Amelia." As I was on the verge of hyperventilation, Matthew ruthlessly thrust the completed divorce papers at me. Receiving them made me even more distressed, and I crouched down, clutching my stomach. I could acutely feel Amelia and Matthew's stares. I couldn't hold it in any longer. Raising my face, which had been downcast, I let out the laughter I had been suppressing in a huge explosion. "What have you been saying this whole time? Why do I have to leave?" My sudden burst of laughter must have seemed abnormal. Amelia distorted her face and took a step back. "But all the property is in my name?" I said while wiping the tears from the corner of my eye. Amelia furrowed her brows in confusion, and Matthew gave a slight smile. "Huh? Do you understand what being handed those divorce papers means? Matthew and Olivia are getting a divorce. You're the unwanted one here, so disappear." My rambling must have seemed like the talk of someone gone mad. Amelia's scent already filled the house. Looking down at her feet, I saw stockings discarded on the living room floor. I realized there was no place for me here anymore. Clinging to a house steeped in Amelia's scent seemed foolish. "Why don't we just move to another house?" "No way. I've really taken to this high-rise apartment." Matthew coaxed Amelia with a relaxed smile. Whatever they were plotting, it was no longer my concern. "Fine. I'll leave, do as you please," Amelia declared confidently with a smirk. Appreciate your understanding. So, Matthew and I will live in this high-rise apartment. Don't complain later, okay?
Yes, be happy. Then I packed my belongings into a single Boston bag and left the room where I was supposed to enjoy a happy married life with Matthew. Days later, returning from the grocery store, I bumped into Amelia and Matthew at the mansion's entrance.
You're still lurking around the mansion?
Creepy. Just leave already.
You don't have anywhere to go, so you're sleeping in the entrance? Wow, how pitiful.
Having a homeless person at the entrance of a luxury high-rise is just unacceptable.
They pitted me based on their own assumptions. I ignored them and headed for the elevator. What? Want to pick up your stuff? No way. The room will get polluted if Drab or Olivia enters. We'll send your stuff COD, just don't enter my house. Where should we send it? To some park or a back alley?
Amelia and Matthew followed me like fish trailing behind, as I walked briskly. Matthew hastily stopped me just as I was about to press the elevator button.
Hey, Olivia, that's the elevator for the upper floors, right? Are you out of your mind?
Did Matthew dumping you shock you into senility?
So leaving the demented old person was a good decision. I don't want to deal with caregiving.
I pressed the elevator button without heeding them.
Hey, stop messing around, homeless. It's disrespectful to the upper floor's elite.
As I entered the elevator, Amelia and Matthew exchanged shocked looks and squeezed in just before the doors closed. Matthew was excited as if he was on an amusement park ride, experiencing the high-floor elevator for the first time. The elevator stopped at the top floor.
Hey, this is not good. Homeless aren't supposed to be here. Stop it.
We don't want to anger the real elite, right? I don't know you.
Despite their attempts to hold me back, Amelia and Matthew curiously looked around. I continued to ignore them and opened the door to the room in front of me. How dare you enter someone's home?
I glanced at them dismissively before entering the room. Matthew, panicking, grabbed the door just before it closed. He slowly pulled the door open and stepped into the room on the top floor of the high-rise apartment. Hey, Olivia.
What do we do? Shall we go in too?
After hesitating at the entrance for a while, the two of them tiptoed down the hallway.
Wow!
Upon entering the living room, Matthew couldn't help but exclaim. The room, with its floor-to-ceiling windows, offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. It was completely different from the one on the 5th floor.
Why do you?
Sitting comfortably on the sofa, I finally met Amelia and Matthew's gaze.
Why? Because this is my house.
Amelia and Matthew's mouths hung open in shock, as if their jaws might drop.
I was forced out of the house suddenly, so I had no choice but to move to this room on the top floor.
Oh, right.
You were going to send the remaining stuff COD, weren't you?
Please send it to this room. The two of them looked like they were about to scream, but couldn't even open their mouths.
Why? Because it's my house.
How many more times do they want me to say this is my house?
I said all the properties were mine, didn't I? The room you're living in and this room, they're all mine. Huh? Why? I didn't know you owned the top floor too. Wasn't the best place you had that room on the 5th floor? Did you trick me?
Matthew, who had lived in my apartment until we got married, had asked if I owned any better properties, wanting to live in the best one.
It's not that I tricked you. The person living on this top floor just moved out recently. No way. The top floor? Me on the fifth and Olivia on the top? That's a lie, don't mess with me. You of all people. Matthew scratched his head in frustration, his mouth twisting. Amelia, are we okay with this misunderstanding? Are we okay with being below Olivia? Let's move to a higher-rise apartment. Yeah, let's move, Matthew. To a higher-rise apartment? The two of them held hands, their eyes sparkling with visions of a splendid future. Yeah. So, Amelia, do you have an apartment higher than this?
Huh? No, of course not.
Too bad.